Greetings and welcome to the Introduction to Python module for serious game development with Python, Django, and Makihiki. This is a fairly complicated and time-consuming module, and I apologize for kind of throwing you guys into it right away, but the reason why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that if you aren't a relatively experienced programmer and able to pick up new languages and kind of work through material in a non guided, well, it's guided, but in a offline self-motivated way, then you can drop the course or stop doing it. And so this module represents how we'll be working for the most part throughout the semester. And so hopefully you'll find that this works out pretty well for you and you want to stay in the course, but if it doesn't work out well for you, then you should seriously reconsider at this point right away whether or not this is the class that's going to work for you. The time associated with this module, I've said, is about 13 hours, which is a lot of time, and we're providing some time, a fair amount of time for you to work on it. That 13-hour estimate is assuming that you're an experienced programmer, but you don't have any prior experience with Python. So starting from scratch with the Python programming language. If you're already good at Python, then it will take considerably less. And if you're already good with Python and the Eclipse integrated development environment, then it will take you even less time. In fact, the first Python tutorial reading assignment A01, if you're already experienced with Python, I'm recommending that you just don't go through that to kind of save you a little bit of repetitive and not that useful activity. So there's a couple things, in addition to just learning about the Python language in this module, there's two other important things that I want to accomplish straight off. That is getting you used to using an integrated development environment. In this course, we're going to be using Eclipse. I want everybody to use Eclipse because later on when we're doing group work, if you're all using the same integrated development environment, you will all work together better than if you weren't. Plus, Eclipse is a good environment to know about, even if it turns out to not be your favorite IDE of all time. It's so widespread that having some exposure to it for 4 months is not a bad thing for you to do. The other thing that we're going to accomplish in this module, there's some fairly big things, and that is to get used to Python coding standards. There's a very mature set of coding standards that everybody is supposed to use when using Python so that the code is maximally easy to read. Readability of code has kind of two components. One is the logic of it. Are you using Python idioms, and are you using iterations and loops and the various constructs in the appropriate way? If you don't do that, it's not that readable. But the second part of readability is the code laid out on the page in the manner that you'd expect it to look, that you're used to looking at. And that has a big impact on readability, because if it's laid out in this weird way you're not used to, then you're spending part of your brain processing power just trying to figure out what you're seeing on the page. So the coding style is a way to kind of eliminate that second level of overhead and allow you to immediately focus in on the logic and assess the readability in that way. Okay, so I want everybody to use the PEP 8, which is the kind of the notation or the reference guide for Python coding style, and it turns out, luckily enough, that the Eclipse IDE builds in support for PEP 8. Okay, now also kind of remarkably, the Google code that you're looking at in the class does not observe PEP 8 in one respect, which is the level of indentation. So that's kind of a blessing in disguise, because what it means is when you import the Google code into the Eclipse IDE for the first time using PyDev, you're going to see a lot of warnings generated, okay, and they're very trivial warnings, easy to fix. So that gives you an example of kind of how PyDev and PEP 8 integrate together, and then you have to do a little bit of kind of Mickey Mouse work to clean it up. And And then hopefully from then on it'll be relatively smooth sailing, and you'll have the IDE will be helping you to write code that's laid out in a way that Python and programmers expect it to be. Okay, I think there's some fun stuff in here. The Google Python tutorial I think is a great introduction to Python. I couldn't have done it as well as the instructor there does, and I've gone through that tutorial myself in the past, and I found it pretty fun. PyDev I think is a real decent environment for Python programming, so I'm real comfortable with that. But it is going to take some serious time if you're a novice to Python to get through all this material. So please, please, allocate enough hours to get through this. If you find you haven't allocated enough hours to get through this, then again, you may just not have the time required to take this class. So that's another part of this self-assessment that I'd like to see happen this week. All right, enjoy.